And I'm joined now by Lara Trump, the former president's daughter-in-law, married to Eric Trump. And she's also the former 2020 senior campaign advisor to the Trump campaign and a Fox News contributor. Lara, very good to have you with us. I know these are, I'm sure there's, a lot going on in your heart and mind as you watch all of this unfold, and we're not insensitive to that. So what's your reaction to what Merrick Garland had to say moments ago, Lara?
I'm kind of shocked, to tell you the truth, that it took 3 days for him to come out and really give us no information. I think a lot of Americans were looking for something, anything that they could look to from the Attorney General that would reassure them that this was not a political attack, that they don't have to be worried, that they were overly aggressive, breaking into the home and raiding the home of a former president of the United States. I mean, that is a very big deal. Shocking, by the way, that they thought that they were going to do this in a very low-key manner. And then to hear the Attorney General try to tell us, well, we should be trusting the FBI. These are great men and women. Look, I have friends that work with the FBI, and many of these people are great individuals, but the American people have a hard time trusting an agency that fabricated documents or used fabricated documents to get a FISA warrant, as we know, to kick off the Russia collusion hoax. Look at the way that parents have been targeted, of course, at school board meetings. You have a whole host of things, not the least of which is the fact that a whistleblower or several at the FBI have recently told us that they're trying to cover up information over there for Hunter Biden. Yeah. But this is where the FBI chose to focus. And so I think as an American, I can tell you, I've had so many people reach out to me over the past several days saying, we can't sleep. Our stomachs are in knots, because this is not something, Martha, that you suppose is going to ever happen in America. And yet here we are, and we're just supposed to accept what the AG came out and said. We got no info.
Yeah, I have a couple of questions for you. One is this issue of an informant or a mole, someone who reached out to the FBI and indicated that they needed to come back, and even, according to these reports, directed them to where they would find it. What is the former president saying about that?
He has no information on that. I mean, I think for all of us,
we're kind of
shocked to hear that. Well, I mean, sadly, look at his White House. Look at, the number of people that seem like they were out for sabotage at all times. It always seems like you got to look behind your back, especially when your last name is Trump. It seems like there's always somebody out to get you. But I don't know in particular that, he's focused on this one. Just a general sense of you got to look out for yourself.
So let me ask you this, because the Attorney General said that it was not possible to do it any other way. He said, we like to go in a way that is as least as unobtrusive as possible. But in this case, it was not possible, suggesting that they had tried other measures to retrieve what they wanted to go get, and that they were stonewalled in some way. Were they stonewalled during that 3-month period after the initial meeting, which we know was very cordial, according to all reports?
Yeah, not to my knowledge, no. In fact, the last word spoken on June 3rd when the investigators came in is they were told, anything you need, let us know, by my father-in-law verbatim. About a day or so later, they received a call asking them to padlock that office that had the information, the files in it that they were interested in. They followed that, to a T. And then the next thing we know, here we are on Monday morning getting a call saying that the FBI is on the doorstep of Mar-a-Lago. So to our knowledge, there was nothing more that could have been done. There was nothing that happened in the interim that would have warranted such an aggressive, heavy-handed approach to something like this, specifically and especially when it is the former president.
So can you confirm that there was no communication between the FBI and the former president or his lawyers between that June 3rd meeting and the padlock discussion and Monday morning?
I just spoke to his lawyer moments ago before I came on with you, and that's exactly what I was told, that was their last communication, was I guess a couple of days maybe after June 3rd, to confirm that the padlock had been put in place. And other than that, that is all they've heard.
And did they have any feeling about who this informant person might be?
No, I mean, I think that's news to a lot of people. And I don't even know that that's the case, to tell you the truth. I think that's maybe a bit of hearsay. I think the FBI maybe kind of alluded to that. But to our knowledge, no, there's no one of concern. There's no one that we would even consider would have anything to say, because quite frankly, we don't even know what they would say.
And how would you characterize how the former president is doing? Is he nervous, concerned, anxious about this or not?
I don't think he's specifically anxious about this. I think it's just an overall feeling that, where are we in the United States of America when this sort of thing could happen? Your two previous guests, I think, laid it out pretty well. But you look at the fact that, man, look at the Bidens, look at the Clintons. They have a history of criminality, of covering it up, and there is absolutely nothing done to them. Why is it that is only the Trump family and Donald Trump that seems to continue to have these witch hunts against him, and he's constantly attacked? I mean, we know that from the day he came down the escalator and said he was running for president of the United States. So I think it's just an overall feeling of more of the same. And sadly, maybe you kind of get used to it at a certain point, not that anyone ever should, but it's really concerning that this sort of thing is able to take place in America, because it's something that we expect to see in a communist or a third world country.
Well, you're not alone in that feeling, that's for sure. So before I let you go, any impact on his decision-making process and when he may announce that he is likely or is going to run again? What's the impact of all of this on that?
Well, I think he knows what he's going to do. I think, look, for Americans, this just solidifies a lot of enthusiasm behind Donald Trump, because I think a lot of people at this point feel like, he's been given such a raw deal so many times. Look at the incredible things he actually did when he was president of the United States, with so much scrutiny, with so much incoming, with so much pressure on him. He got so many great things done. Man, do we need Donald Trump back now more than ever. This country is in a really dire situation. I think they know he's the guy that can get it done. So I think people now more than ever want Donald Trump to run for president in 2024. This just solidifies a lot of support behind him, as far as I'm concerned.
Laura, thank you. Laura Trump, always good to talk to you. Thank you very much for joining us.
Hi, everyone. I'm Brian Kilmeade. I want you to do me a favor. I want you to click to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page. This is the only way that I know for sure that you're not going to miss any great commentary, any great news bites, any great interviews coming your way on Fox. You can get it all here on YouTube. So subscribe right now.